man, left to his own devices, tendentially gets lost in the universe. However, there is one thing at the deepest level that seems to unite all the inhabitants of time and space on this side of eternity. The unwritten law. Indeed, the great writer C.S. Lewis, in his book Mere Christianity, indicates that the universality of this awareness of the moral law, universal over the whole planet and throughout the whole experience of the centuries, is an indication that there is a hidden writer, that the law has been written by the finger of God in the depths of the human soul, and that therefore we have a God who is good, for moral order is reflecting his order, and he wants this order reflected on earth. Therefore, we have a God who wishes us well, who wishes our good, and the fact is that as long as that human soul does not totally block out the voice of conscience, the voice of God is still heard on earth, not noisily, but deep down. And try though we may, we are not always completely successful in quenching what is in us. Something hurts when we wound our God. We know deep down that we have offended. In practice, what happens is that the soul tries to flee, tries to dumb, tries to make painless what is deep down, and so will invent wonderful means of escape. And one big one is that of distraction, linked with that of pleasure, so that more is felt than what is not felt, and with that we conquer, and so it would seem. And what we observe out there in the world is a pattern of people getting louder and louder, people getting engaged with louder and louder volumes of joy, apparently, thereby avoiding the pain. What is a drug, if it be not something that anesthetizes against the pain? And what is a drug, if it is not something which takes away from reality? But there is a joy in facing reality head on and being honest. There is a joy in returning home. There is a joy in being in harmony with the harmony of the universe, that is, in the divine will. And only in there is there peace. And peace is the deepest ingredient of joy. And so true joy is precisely through inscaping and not escaping. So the law of the Lord, of which the first reading and the singing of King David in much of the Psalms speaks, is singing of the joy of finding harmony. We are guided by the hand that made us and by the brain that dreamt us. He knows best. It's rather as though we were toys invented, and at a certain point we want to play without reference to the one who made us. Or indeed, we want to play a game without reference to the instructions, or we want to play with some delicate machine without reference to the instructions for use. We think we have grown up, and yet we cannot handle the cosmos without reference to its maker. We are our own worst enemies if we attempt to do so. What great bomb can we invent next with our own great genius? And so it is that the Colossians also are warned about trying to have a mixture, a syncretic mingling of bits of religion without reference to the complete truth of Christ. Christ is not just a way amongst others, and we cannot mix him with the worshipping of angels and demons, with bits of Judaism and paganism, all well mixed up. Although Christ is believed in, he is not clearly observed in his totality. St. Paul was not actually the founder of the church at Colossae, but he was concerned about its well-being. And so he's writing there to the heart of Asia Minor to warn them that they need to understand what Christ is. With regard to the gospel, there is this link between it and the first reading in the essence of the law indicated. This scribe does actually answer correctly. He's a lawyer, and although he is, so it seems, speaking to disconcert Jesus, he is actually himself aware of the essence of the law, because he answers correctly in answer to the Lord's question, "What is written in the law? What do you read there? You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength," and here comes in also with all your mind. And then, interestingly enough, he correctly adds on here, "and your neighbor as yourself." So he has seen the essence of the law. You have answered right. And then we have this unexpected twist. Who is my neighbor? Which leads to this very well-known and beautiful parable. The Samaritans were poor Israelites. They were regarded as schismatics. There was also an element of heathen infiltration there. They would not worship in Jerusalem, and they would not accept all the Old Testament. Even to this day, there is a cult, a sacrificial cult on Mount Gerizim. But the Lord always seems to be compassionate towards them whenever there's a reference to them. And this parable, interestingly enough, favors them and shows that goodness is beyond the barriers of what is sometimes officially accepted as the norm for orthodoxy. For God meets souls where they are, and the unwritten law of charity and goodness is a lever. It's something that the Holy Spirit uses to get into a soul, there where that soul may be. It's something that we too need to have in our deepest awareness. The word neighbor, in German Nachbar, is something which is linked with nach, close. It's the nearest person to us. In Latin, proximus, the closest. And in Greek, plesion, same thing, closest. And it is something which is very physical. It's very immediate, and therefore it avoids the danger of illusion. We cannot love people in darkest Africa and help them with our economic charity and be really nasty to the person physically next to us. It's incoherent. Charity begins at home. Now, charity begins, of course, in our own soul. We have to love ourselves and be ordered towards ourselves and not in any way sacrifice our soul in the bad sense to help others out of a badly understood charity out of order. But then charity begins concretely, really, at home, around us, and aiming at the expression of God's presence, which is the soul that comes there at this present moment to ask my attention. We give that person total attention, because in that person we're honoring Christ the Lord. And therefore charity is very concrete. We cannot create beautiful liturgy and in it upset each other. we are misunderstanding the nature of the presence. It's the same presence under different modalities, different modes. The Lord is present at the altar, but He's present there in the brother, the sister, right next to me, who has to be loved. I was quite impressed the other day when we started to form new little altar boys, and I was able to see how instinctively the older altar boys were showing both good education and charity. That is never upsetting. That is a very important message. Anything that happens at the altar must be also in the ambit of the presence of God worshipped. That permeates all our liturgical activity, including forming little ones. All that happens in church must be worthy of the one that we're honouring and be in His Spirit. The Spirit of God is a spirit of peace, of warmth, of healing and love. All that we do in the house of God must be an extension and an expression of that. So here we have this complete opposite in the question of going in a hurry to probably worship God in the temple. We have a priest and a Levite who go by and pass by on the other side, no doubt in a hurry to give God His worship in the temple. They were on the way to Jerusalem. And yet they missed the worship of God to be offered in the ditch. This other one, who had an incomplete theology and cult, worshipped the Creator by responding to the nudge of the Spirit in him. That is kind of important. We have to be available to come to that expression of God which was not programmed in our day, because our day is full of surprises, and we may miss the Lord by seeking Him with that vision of the priest and the Levite who are making a beeline for one focal point and missing the grace that was right there. Timeo Dominum transiuntem, said St. Augustine. I fear the Lord passing. That is, I may not see Him when He's actually passing and grasp His grace. Well, we need to be open. The Lord may come right now with the door ringing. What will I say? Sorry, I am busy meeting the Lord. And the Lord is saying, are you sure? Little things. There are but moments in 1,000 years, yet one of these can make 1,000 more. A moment wipes another moment's tears, and tames the rage of hours that went before. Without a thought for what their course did bear, of unsensed sweetness that hard harnessed haste, paused not to prove or thank, for coming ne'er within the hour's utility, 'twas waste. And yet there is a gaspillage that saves a day from utter aging with the rest. A blast whose prodigality behaves with that strange madness that with sense is blessed. For we walk on in this our hurried fate, and past the appointed time, lest we be late.